Netflix Devil May Cry is finally here. After 6 years of wait since the initial announcement, we are at last given new DMC content to enjoy, with Eddie Shankar's take on the franchise. After binging it once the instant it came out, and then a second time the following day, taking pages of notes both times, I weirdly enough found myself sitting here in front of my keyboard still struggling to start typing, uncertain what to even say or how I felt about it. I have my share of both issues and things I liked, but when looking at it as a whole, I felt surprisingly indifferent about it, which is strange after what a long time it's been coming. As I said in my video from February discussing some of the trailers and the opening, we have known for a while that this anime would take place in its own continuity, independent from the canon that we are used to. So I went into it being accepting of the fact that they would make changes and reshuffle elements from the games. Meaning I will try to avoid making criticisms which solely boil down to that's not how it happened in the games. If you take issue with its inaccuracies, I can't really blame you. After how long it's been, it would have been nice to get a story which fits into the world which we miss so dearly. But without further ado, let's dig into Netflix DMC. While I don't intend to discuss this show on an episode-by-episode basis, but more as a cohesive whole, I would like to point out that episode 1 especially felt kinda odd right off the bat, with how it featured only 3 scenes of Dante, the final one of which being a cute little Faust dance reference, sure, but not really contributing to the narrative, and then ending super random on Dante just passing out. Meanwhile, the rest was devoted to DMC1 marionette cosplayers getting their museum raided by an oddly attractive, scarily well animated white rabbit, that part was cool, before a whole bunch of political talk, government meetings, and explaining the science of the world. That part was definitely less cool. Also a minute of this absolutely grating scene with the character Anders. Episode 1 and 6 were definitely the worst offenders at this, making Dante practically feel like a side character in his own show, the way DMC2 and 4 also do, but even all throughout the rest there was this lack of focus on him that I wasn't entirely happy with. I specifically wanted this anime to come out swinging with fresh ideas and scenarios which would change the attitude that all of Dante's stories have already been told, so the lack of him in it does worry me this idea will persist within Capcom. He almost felt like a secondary protagonist to Lady, who is gonna have to be addressed later on since I also got some problems with her. I am aware that back when that scene of Dante fighting the demons in the alley was first shown, there was a massive uproar over how the show appeared to not understand his character or was embarrassed over its quips, hence making the decision to lampshade it a la Dante is a goofy goober so his jokes are supposed to be bad. I didn't give my 2 cents on it back then, and I have tried to avoid seeing other people's reactions for the most part to not have it influence my opinions, but while I think that the full show certainly does a better job with its comedic writing at parts, there is still this rather persistent vibe it occasionally gives off of trying to turn Dante into an awkward Mr. Stark ooh boy, where the music cuts out completely and the joke is, haha, isn't it cute how this loser tries to be funny? I will admit that I've never really had any Dante lines particularly crack me up, but the important thing about them is that the way Dante carries himself is brimming with confidence. He is convinced that he is the coolest guy in the room, in an infectious way that even if you probably won't laugh, he'll likely at least get a grin out of you. 3 does contain elements of showing him failing in embarrassing ways, namely with the jukebox and the sneeze, but never in a way where it shows Dante questioning that he's the shit, unsurely scratching the back of his neck as he says his line. So that's one regard where Netflix Dante doesn't entirely work for me like I'd want him to. He's still a fun character, of course, but I guess to me it made him not quite capture the spirit of who he's supposed to be. And AU or not, I think that is something which an adaptation is obligated to get right, especially when its goal is to introduce a lot of new people into this franchise. Another very important aspect which feels off about Dante is the show's handling of his devil trigger. Before I get into it, let me just say that I was incredibly happy to see them clearly taking strong inspiration from the 4 and 5 design, which in my opinion is way cooler than the chinless one with the bicycle helmet hair from 3, but I guess in order to somewhat compensate for fans of 3's DT, they gave his nose the Lord Voldemort treatment. Bit of a strange choice, but along with the white face it should help make it a distinguished, instantly identifiable take. Where my issue lies is with how heavily this show focuses on Dante's power being derived from rage somehow. His healing factor speeding up when he gets angry, his DT activating, and then him brutally pummeling the life out of Rudra on the floor on some Senator Armstrong shit, after a line which mimics the most mean-spirited and cynical moments Reboot Dante had to offer.
Killing your child like that? Watching it explode into little wet chunks?
You know what I felt when I killed your brother? Nothing.
The show later makes a point of this and how, like Sparda, he must embrace the darkness that's within me and learn to channel it into something good, which is not necessarily a bad idea for a power. Anime rage modes with their advantages and drawbacks exist for a reason. But I again find this somewhat out of place and misrepresenting the spirit of the series. It's called Devil May Cry for a reason. Whether it makes logical sense or not, the thing that supposedly gives Dante, Nero, and Sparda the power they hold within these games is their human capacity for care and compassion.
You surrendered your humanity. It's that simple. You assume humans are weak, but humans possess something that demons don't.
Why won't you give me strength? Am I not worthy?
Never could take those legends too literally. But I do know that Sparda had a heart. A heart that could love another person. A human. That is what you lack.
With DMC3 having Dante starting out as a petty, ignorant child,
I just don't like you, that's all.
Yet over the course of the story growing to genuinely care and awakening to his responsibilities, only then definitively overcoming Vergil, who abandoned his humanity in a blind pursuit of more power. Anger, of course, can be an emotion caused by one's caring, and I obviously remember how Dante becomes more powerful in DMC1 after getting mad when he believes Mundus to have killed Trish.
Silence!
But I would still say that this rule generally seems to apply itself as the intended heart for the series, at least Itsuno onward. Also, while Dante has himself a grand old time slaying demons, he has never chosen to be actively sadistic about it like he is in this scene with Rudra. That isn't to say that Netflix Dante is not a compassionate character. I was really happy at the amount of scenes we got dedicated to just showing him saving people. His attachment to his amulet as the physical representation of his mother's memory is endearing, and fleshed out better in a way that may show him a bit more openly softy than he usually is in the games, but for me it worked well. And him dealing the final blow to the unnamed, no longer sexy bunny after hearing Vergil is still out there was really good in my opinion.
I have to live for him.
Lady in this show is weird. I'm genuinely happy to have her back in the role of an active participant after DMC 4 and 5 sort of threw her to the wayside, appearing here and there but never actually doing anything. As one could obviously tell though the moment her design was revealed, displaying her as some sort of police enforcement, this would be a drastically different take on the character. This difference is instantly felt the moment she opens her mouth.
Cow shit. Devil spawn, motherfucker. Typical demon shit. This is evil as fuck. The least he could fucking do, really. Bomb going off in its fucking neck. Who caught who now, motherfucker?
I don't have a problem with cursing or anything, but how hard they laid it on was legit comical, and at points had me unable to take her seriously, since she was trying to sound tough by talking like that Vivzipop meme. Despite how much the 90 fucks per hour had me frowning, I was willing to give this take a chance. We know that Lady has had a rough past, and showing that make her hardened and angry is true to what she was like in 3. But when they show her backstory throughout episode 3 and 6, we see how Arkham in this take was a much different character. A normal, gentle father, driven mad with his ambition to study and prove the existence of demons, murdering Kalina in a Nosferatu frenzy before burning himself to a crisp, reaching out as a human. Horribly traumatizing, surely, but almost a saint compared to his game iteration. I may be misinterpreting some stuff, but to my knowledge, Arkham's whole reason for even marrying Lady's mother and conceiving her was solely since she was a descendant of a priestess Sparda sacrificed to seal Tammany grew. Her whole existence to him was like raising a pig for slaughter, a means to an end so he would be able to become a god. He's not only the worst boss fight of this series, but a genuinely despicable monster. And yet, Lady can't help but feel anger and emptiness after his supposed demise, only for a few of his words to be enough to break through and manipulate her into believing none of it was his fault. Her desperation to see the good in a father who probably never cared for her, having her crying on her knees, determined to make Vergil pay. And even at the very end, when Arkham's true nature can no longer be denied and she finally takes him out, she's unable to hold her tears. Lady is a very mind-strong and emotional character, who is maybe a little too fast to shoot at people she doesn't know deserve it, but that empathetic side of hers is of vital importance to both her and Dante's story. So all of that existing within a character who's probably had a much more fucked up past than her Netflix iteration makes the significantly rougher attitude found in this show feel really try-hard and comparatively unjustified somehow, and like it's not paying its due respects to her vulnerable side, which, same as with Dante, is where her depth resides. In episode 4, after the Darkcom squad is taken out to a song which sounds a lot like Crimson Cloud, paralyzing them with memories of boring V gameplay. Come on, I know him asking for the DMC1 remake was annoying, but this is not okay. Lady finds herself searching refuge from Cavalier in the apartment of what she doesn't realize is a demon family. Eventually, after learning of the plight of the Makayans, she changes her mind, going,
I know better than to trust the words of a demon. But after everything that's happened, maybe I don't actually know shit.
Something about this shift to me feels extremely sudden, and I can't quite put my finger on it. Of course she wouldn't just gun down this family, but I feel like this being the first moment in the show you can actually see Lady being kind is jarring. Her line implies that she's grown throughout what she experienced and had her viewpoints challenged, but all her interaction with Dante was one chase scene and a small talk calling it bullshit that he's denying his demon side while he's cuffed in the back of her truck. In DMC3, it took her longer to get over her prejudices, and Dante was the one who made her do so by getting better because of her, going as far as to shed a tear for the ones he cares about. 3's story is simple, but the way these characters intertwine and change is genuinely really well done. So it feels like a downgrade to have Lady's change in opinion be almost entirely disconnected from the protagonist. And for this season at least, this is basically the entirety of the arc she goes through. Since I didn't look into much of other people's opinions yet, I can't say what the general consensus on the ending is. But to me, while all the other shit around it is extremely bizarre and left an incredibly bad taste in my mouth, the idea of Lady backstabbing Dante and, while being more conflicted about him now, still being certain that he is too dangerous to be left out there is something that I enjoy in isolation. It leads me to hope that my issues with her arc feeling so rushed can still be addressed, since she is shown to not have fully completed it. I was talking a lot about how in 3, her feelings for her father were important, both for Dante to learn from her, and as a weakness for a sad father to exploit. Vice President Baines seems to be functioning as this anime's version of her father figure, who sees her as a mere tool while she is shown to easily submit to and try to see the good in him where there is none. So if Season 2 has her continuing to go through more gradual development before seeing Baines for who he really is and taking him down, that could be a satisfying way to make her arc whole. As is, I'm not really a fan of her or her story in this take. And one thing that bothers me, I know there is the whole thing about how plot holes don't matter and trying to focus on errors in logic within entertainment is just one way to ruin everything for yourself. But the beginning of episode 7 has Lady seeing the building that was blown to bits, killing all of Darkcom and the Makaians inside, attributing it to the White Rabbit. So to my understanding, she's supposed to not be aware of this having happened in response to all the refugees being gunned down. But why would Bane's order to all of his troops specifically not go through to his highest ranking lieutenant? And even if you were to assume the first guy he called elaborated that it was Lady's order, and Baines then saw it fit to leave her out of the call, Dante and Lady would have absolutely heard the screams and gunshots long before the explosions went off. So while I am excited for the potential of her still having to become independent and break free of being that abused orphan turned brainwashed soldier, like the rabbit said, having her view of Baines not already being shattered hinge on things during an incredibly vital moment making no fucking sense is definitely tarnishing it somewhat. As the third of the main character trio, let's continue with the White Rabbit and his lackeys. Generally, I really like this character. I'm dumb, so I obviously fucked with his design heavy, but I also thought he was incredibly well animated and expressive, nicely voice acted, and the idea for his motivations was well thought out. It reminded me of some of the villains in Infamous, like how Augustine hunted down and imprisoned conduits in order to save them from a world which would have treated them much worse. I don't know what you'd call this trope, but I think it is a cool way to create a sympathetic villain. Episode 6 did a good job showing his life as Lil V. No, not that one. Yeah. And how the death of his little friend to the toxic air made him determined to create a better world for them. I thought the events leading up to the backstory scene with him and Lady were kinda unclear, but after rewatching it a couple times, I guess it makes sense, so criticism revoked. With that scene igniting hatred, and I guess...
Now, we all go down the rabbit hole together.
Being a cool way of saying that he'll bring hell on earth, removing Sparda's barrier to free the Makaians. Shame his final form became a big ugly Resident Evil monster, but I guess that's not uncommon for this series. In that video where I raised some concerns, I talked about how I wanted the demons to have more of an actual goal holding them together than them being merely random muscle. And I was accepting of changes made to facilitate that, since a lot of DMC bosses just kinda exist for you to fight and don't hold any purpose beyond that, like Goliath for example. I think this show generally did a good job at giving them something they stand and fight for, trying to save themselves and their kind from the horrors of their homeland, resenting Sparda for his betrayal, whilst having the rabbit on top of that seek revenge for the murder of his family. Echidna and Cavalier still don't really do anything, but Agni and Rudra criticize Sparda's actions and get to taunt Dante over the loss of his family, while Agni's powers did allow the show to add a good old reliable MC PTSD trigger with a fire. Plasma's ability to copy Dante is paid homage to and used in a logical way by turning him into the spy of the group, and the scene of him utterly devastated as he's forced to watch his people be executed before deciding to blow up the building, including himself, in a final act of revenge was in my opinion incredibly well done. I don't really understand why there was the need to set up the rule of Plasma keeping a person alive to copy, only for the guy he copies to never appear again, but I was still pretty happy with the way they took this random DMC1 enemy and found a pretty clever use for him within the story. Also, the voice effect on him was something which I haven't really heard before. I guess Sparda comes up pretty often when discussing the villains, so let's talk about him. First of all, his design is awesome. It definitely is a different take, while still looking very much like him. The giant horns reduced in size and made more angular, same as his face, and his giant bug wings replaced with a red cape, though it might be his wings similar to Dante's DT. Along with the various gold accents, it makes him look a lot more regal than his game incarnation. Also, random, but I am very happy they extended the length of Force Edge's blade, and retained some of its purple effects from that one DMC3 cutscene, since in the games, Force Edge always looked extremely stubby and silly to me. This show makes a number of other changes to Sparda, such as removing him completely out of Dante's and Vergil's life, making it so they never even met him, implying that he may still be alive, and introducing the idea of his betrayal being a selfish choice, which in the human world he, and in the demon world Mundus, grew to benefit the most out of. There was also some weird bit of Dante saying something about 200,000 years ago, but that was probably a script error. Pretty sure Sparda was supposed to have existed around year 0, and not caveman times. Anyway, the concept of Sparda's act of protecting humanity not being a noble one is interesting. Of course, we already had Beowulf furiously calling him a traitor and stuff, but adding the angle of him as the most powerful demon having the privilege to rebel and lock everyone beside himself away in hell, together with an angered Mundus, as he gets to live as a hero on the other side, makes for a well-considered motivation to rile up the demons against him and bring depth to his myth. Although, it is not lost on me that this of course also falls very heavily into the modern trope of deconstructing old legends, where every positive or inspiring story is shown to be an unrealistic fairy tale of a guy who probably sucked ass. Think something like Last Jedi's Luke Skywalker, for example. So I don't entirely know how to feel about this. On the one hand, I do think it's interesting. On the other, it feels like it's becoming a tired and joyless trope which sprouted from cynicism about the world when DMC at its core has always been very fun and wholesome. And one has to of course consider that all these ideas of just normal demon civilians which are like you and me but slightly green with cute little horns, locked in a world rendered uninhabitable by toxic mist that kills them and their children, is an idea not from the source material, but specifically invented for this take, so that they could add this "Sparda was a narcissist, humans are the real demons" angle. But I guess, before being able to make any kind of final judgment over this, I'd have to wait and see how the story develops in the seasons to come, especially if they really do intend to keep Sparda as still alive. Talking about judgment, cut to episode 7 and Vergil standing in front of that DMC3 boss rush looking thing. What the hell is this Nilo Angelo design, dude? I'm not like in love with the one from the games with his little jester horns dangling down his face, but it looks infinitely better than this Ninja Turtle shaped square brick with a neck the girth of a tree trunk. Also, why is his face out? Why would he even be Nello already? And why is he talking about Mundus as the one who freed him from his bondage? Clearly, unless this might be some mind control thing, which seems unlikely with him shedding his vile CG armor at will, Vergil in this adaptation is gonna be changed from top to bottom. And while it wouldn't be fair to make any definitive statements already, I don't think I'm gonna be a fan of this new take, having him willingly submit and give praise to the guy who killed his mother. It's also weird to me how him and the White Rabbit are working together as freedom fighters for the Macayans, when Rabbit repeatedly talks about Mundus' cruelty and what a nightmare they are forced to live in with him, while Vergil talks about how generous he is. Doesn't seem like this alliance should pass. And the ending, I love Bury the Light, but this was really not as cool as they thought it would.
The Sapiens and their armies, unaware of the storm they ride into. I am that storm. They don't know storm approaching. I am storm approaching. I am the storm that is approaching.
I feel icky and like I need to chop my hands off when I reuse a noun within the span of 2 sentences, but they say storm 3 times within the span of 13 words. Also, while I still wish we could have gotten Ruben as Dante somehow, although from what I heard he can no longer pull off his young Dante voice, which would be a reasonable excuse to go for Johnny instead, I'm much less so a fan of the choice for Vergil's new VA. Not because he sounds bad or anything, but how much older he sounds in this will lose a quality of Vergil in 3 that I really appreciated, where his very distinct and still youthful voice added this veil of naivety over all his self-serious talk. He puts on the appearance of someone who should be a lot more mature than Dante, but he's really not. That kind of thing is weirdly satisfying as a character flaw in a villain. Okay, getting a little harder now to find big topics to dedicate segments to, so expect a bit more miscellaneous aspects discussed. The action in this anime is glorious. In episode 1 and 2. Afterwards, when the various CGI demons get introduced, there's definitely a noticeable drop in quality, with less creative choreography and less of Dante toying with his enemies. Maybe it would have been too much to permanently keep him as powerful as he's portrayed at the start. The lady chase scene, for example, wouldn't work if he continued to be lightning fast all throughout, but with this being where a lot of my excitement came from, I was sort of disappointed with stuff like the bike chase being so janky looking at parts, and later fights becoming rather straightforward sword duels. Also, there being no use of Royal Guard felt like a shame, but I guess that would be a lot more game mechanic-y than how they're able to show him naturally teleporting around through super speed blur effects. Dante's decreased competency in combat in later episodes, as my brother Beak pointed out, yes, that's how you pronounce it, may also contribute a bit to that Iron Boy Jr. vibe I described earlier throughout this review. Lady as well did less crazy gun kata stuff than I anticipated, and mostly just fired her guns normally in later episodes, with a 20-second appearance of Kalina Ann that didn't leave too much of an impression. Kalina Ann, along with her magnetic cuffs, and I would assume all her other technology, are apparently made by Goldstein, as mentioned in episode 3. While I'm not too hot on this high-tech focus on her creations, I'm sure once Lady becomes independent, her aesthetic will change to something more familiar. And it is good to know that we already got the setup for where Ebony and Ivory will be from. The running gag of having Dante constantly gripping his guns too hard and breaking them was really funny in my opinion.
The gun you gave me was defective.
You're not getting another one.
And I guess via ENI, it already has a satisfying resolution in sight. Also, yes, I'm totally still making that gun critique, I'm just lazy. Mentioning running gags, it is a good time to just talk about some of the jokes. I thought these were hilarious.
Oh, that was crazy! Too bad your eyes weren't here to see it. What's he gonna do? Get air dye on us?
Was the gag really necessary?
I love him
And
just
it's not to
not
kill
even
any of them.
commenting on that.
Had to. Who are we shooting at?
Most definitely like trickster stuff now. That's so fun. Yeah, teleport. Let's go. This shit is making me so happy. I think the punchline of the "your mom calls me a superhero" joke is pretty funny, but the way it is drawn out for so long on top of again no music makes it lose a lot of its steam. On top of, in my opinion, just not suiting Dante particularly well. Humor is subjective of course, but to me, at the part where they find the rabbit disposed of the tracking device on the amulet, it would have been funnier if Dante made some kind of joke along the lines of how the Easter Bunny is notorious for hiding things, instead of something where he sounds unsure of himself. The way he addresses Lady as, well, Lady, also sounds a lot less natural than it does in 3. Works really nicely as a line to dismiss her after she obviously does not care to engage with him. The first,
Hey, lady!
there wouldn't be anything wrong with, but it's so quiet and buried under the music that you can hardly even hear it. And then after she kills Rudra by returning him to his lore accurate state, he goes, "I know you. Lady," as if he's pushing that name onto her instead of it just happening to be part of his sentence. Similar to Mr. Poetry for V, had he said something along the lines of, "Oh hey, it's Lady Pottymouth," that would have been a better way to include the word without making it so transparently come across as, "this is what we call her." Anyway, this is a dumb gripe, I'm sure several people who watched it thought it worked perfectly well. One aspect that I wasn't sure where to put in this video is Enzo. He doesn't do a whole lot, but while I am unfamiliar with his Devil May Cry version beyond the fact he exists in supplementary material, I thought his inclusion was an incredibly nice idea, and him and Dante had a fun chemistry. With Enzo being a sleazy scumbag who occasionally sells him out and gets him in trouble, but seems to only do so because he knows Dante will come out fine in the end, as he does actually care for him. The scene of him encouraging Dante and making him smile when he says that him being the son of Sparda explains everything was quite sweet. The previous episodes showed Dante in strong denial of his demon heritage, feeling insulted at the idea, talking about it to Cavalier and questioning whether one could be a demon and still decide to be good. So Enzo saying that obviously Dante's father was the good demon clearly resonated with him. His sacrifice at the end did come a bit too sudden and unnecessary for it to exactly hit me in the feels, unfortunately, but nevertheless, I think his inclusion worked nicely. One thing that didn't work at all for me was this scene.
You know me. I'm always happy.
Right. Your jokes are weak shit cover. I've seen you in moments when you think no one's looking.
There aren't really any scenes in the show where Lady possibly could have watched Dante like that, and on top of that, it is also just incredibly on the nose. I do enjoy and want to see more of Dante being a character who's hurting inside, but putting on a front to avoid further hurt, but this was not really the way to go about it in my opinion. Hopefully Season 2 will have more moments of Dante alone, so the shift in his personality depending on who he's surrounded by can be displayed more clearly in a more show-don't-tell manner. Talking about Season 2, I guess this is where I'm gonna wrap it up by talking about that ending. First, we get another fucking annoying scene with that Anders guy, who after previously fumbling over his words for a minute in a mind-numbing way, now decides to have two separate insane laughs before getting shot and hopefully never fucking appearing again. And then, with the rabbit's portal device in his possession, and Dante locked away frozen in cryostasis, Vice President Baines proceeds to bomb hell, the army conquering it with flags, taking photos of them posed up around displayed corpses, while American Idiot plays, before a teaser for Arius, who will in fact not just be an anime opening reference. I don't really know how to exactly feel about this, nor do I know how I could even go about explaining why it's just kinda ass. It feels almost like it should be self-evident, but I'm not sure why. Easiest way I could put it is that, considering it being a Devil May Cry show, it just feels violently out of place with practically anything that ever happened in or is appealing about that franchise. Baines and his religious fanaticism could work as a fitting enemy considering the Order of the Sword and DMC's frequent use of the fake angel aesthetic. But all this political and military shit? I don't know, man. And with this first season already having the issue, in my opinion, of not focusing on Dante for enough of it, the proposition of him now being frozen away until at some point within the middle of the next one, during a probably completely unrelated Hell vs US Army plot, another character hopefully goes to save him. To me that just sounds really dumb, and definitely not like what I want out of this series. But I guess there's only gonna be one way to see how this turns out. Let's hope that within the 6 years until the next season, we will at least have gotten another game finally. I feel like there's probably still other stuff I could have said, but this script seems good enough for me. And after having it all put down now, I definitely feel more confident in my opinion on this anime. That being that, it's aight. I definitely have a lot of issues with it, and everything but Lady aside, I'm not sure I can be confident that whatever follows will steer it more towards my liking. But there were also a bunch of things which I thought were pretty cool, concepts and ideas which I'm intrigued to see more of, and of course episode 2 gave us some of the most beautiful Dante choreography since our boy slammed his fist down on that jukebox. So I can't say I love it, but I can't say I hate it either. I continue to feel weirdly middling about it, which is probably not the most exciting conclusion to draw after 34 minutes. But I figure honesty is appreciated over me trying to say whatever is likely to be the most agreeable. If you have any opinions on the show, be they positive or negative, I would be very curious to hear what you thought. I tried to be thorough, but maybe I overlooked or grazed by something which was vital to your enjoyment/hatred of it. Now that this is done, I should definitely get my lazy butt back to working on that Ebony and Ivory rant though. Or maybe tell my tale of the speedrun event first, I'm not sure yet. Couldn't address this in my last video since the brilliance of my April Fool's gag was not to be disturbed, but the fact I'm at almost 600 subscribers already is fucking insane. Genuinely amazed with how many people have been enjoying my output, so thank you all so much. Now I just need to hit the 1000 and from one day to the next I'll be filthy rich. How cruel that their idea of paying lip service to Beautiful Joe is showing Charles and Leo fucking dead. And anyone else think it was weird how often they show pretty Dante with ugly bulbous growths in this show? The gore could look pretty cool though.